So I'd like to take us through a couple of elements within the story of Shimshon from the Tanakh, which many students notice is very out of place in the Tanakh. To summarize the story, we have a superpowered maniac. He breaks every single rule that he's given. He kills a lot of people. He chases a lot of women, and he dies a gruesome death. Within the context of Tanakh, it is very difficult to understand how this individual is a hero, how we can place him as a shofet within Sefer Shoftim, and how do we wrap our mind around him within the context of Jewish practice and Jewish thought. However, he comes into a bit more focus when we place him alongside similar characters in world mythology. Carl Jung noticed that there's a certain character that is very prevalent in many mythologies, especially in Native American stories of the trickster. This is a character who sometimes is the creator, sometimes is a figure that is a culture hero or somebody very close to the creator. But we see that they are in possession of superhuman powers. They display animalistic or impulsive behavior and often break normative sexual taboos of their culture. We see that despite the fact that sometimes they're clever and trick others, they're also very often subject to the trickery of others and behave quite foolishly. And we see often that by the end of their narrative, they are somehow transformed into a type of savior figure. If we've learned the story of Samson, even on a surface level, we can go through this like a checklist. And rather than doing that, I'd like to focus on one particular symbolic element, which is the blinding of the trickster, which is ubiquitous in trickster stories. Some of the examples of eye loss or blinding of the trickster includes when Odin gives one of his eyes in exchange for the wisdom to be the ruler of all of creation. In Egyptian mythology, Horus loses his eye in battle with his uncle Set and then gives his eye once again to resurrect his father Osiris and to allow his father to rule the underworld. In Native American mythology, Coyote, very foolishly, he's juggling his eyes and he loses his eyes, gets new ones from the Apaches, and then only then is he able to go on and defeat the fox, who has been his nemesis through all of the creators. We see in some of the myths that castration takes the place of eye injury, but I think, as we'll see, it is essentially an equivalent symbolic structure. The things we notice within all of these narratives that are in common is that as a symbolic system, the connection of the blinding of the trickster includes their elevation from an animalistic state, from being subject to their own desires and essentially out of control. And now they're able to focus on their constructive purpose, on their essential destiny. We see that it leads to wisdom, to new life, to transformation, and that's the path then that leads them to become the ultimate savior. Essentially, the loss of a physical eye leads to true vision. We might say that the loss of one eye leads to a focused, singular vision. It's very similar in a way to the idea that the malachim, the angels, stand on one leg. What does that mean metaphorically? That they're focused on a singular purpose, and that essentially explains who they are and their existence. From a perspective of Torah, we see that, of course, eyes are symbolic of the folly of desire. We say every day, Lo taturu acharei levavchem v'acharei einechem asher atem zonim achreihem. Do not follow your heart and your eyes in a lustful urge. And Shimshon, of course, his downfall is as a result of his eyes. He's tricked by Delilah because he is so in love with her that he foolishly tells her all of his secrets. And yet, the blinding, the removal of those eyes, is what positions him to be able to destroy the entire ruling class of the Philistines and to free the Jewish people from under the boot of the Philistine conquerors. All right. And so a student will have a certain enduring understanding here that the trickster, as an archetype, is the malevolent savior, often misled by the temptations of this world, until eventually they're forced to focus on their true purpose. And we can see Shimshon as a manifestation of this archetype. And through that lens, Shimshon becomes a very powerful allegory for the Jewish people. We've read the book of Judges. This is coming towards the end. The Jewish people have been misled. They've been living in chaos. And so the blinding of Shimshon and his eventual victory essentially shows the power and the potential for redemption as Shimshon is redeemed as a type of savior figure.